Hey everybody, hope you're able to get Pro Tools all set up and that you've got the content downloaded now that we've got working through some kinks on that sort of stuff. So I wanted to take you through, now that we've imported some of this material, or at least that we have access to it, where I might go next to organize this stuff, since we're dealing with a little bit more of post-production for a live production. How I might go ahead and do that. So I'm going to open up, I'm just going to go with song 1 for these examples. And I'm going to open up that particular song from our session. And, like I said at the end of the first video, we're kind of dealing with, it's pretty well organized already. We've got some color coordination happening, so don't necessarily have to go through all of those different things. But I do want to do things like create groups and set up some markers to show exactly, what the song structure of this particular tune is, because that can, help us throughout the mixing process a little bit. And, please bear with me. I understand there's a pretty wide range of Pro Tools skills in this class. So there's some guys that have been through some of this stuff before, and then some people that still have really spent very little time with Pro Tools. So I'm going to go through a lot of the basics and try to talk about why I'm doing these sort of things. But believe me, we're going to take this to a pretty advanced place in the next 2 weeks, so we can make a pretty cool mix out of this stuff and hopefully show even more advanced users some new things. And before I really get going here, I do want to mention that you don't really want to do much editing. We're really focusing on mixing and balancing things and perfecting the sound of each element and balancing them with one another within like a group of instruments, and then all together. We don't really want to do any editing because we're syncing this stuff to video that already exists. That's going to be the exact duration of the audio content that's in here. So we don't want to be doing any chopping or trimming of the edges. We might have fade ins and fade outs, but we don't want to actually change the length of this audio. So please keep that stuff in mind. So since I've got this nice sort of organization here, looking at this, it's like, well, somebody else kind of went through and did these sort of things. So I just might rearrange the way these are sort of laid out for me. So for me, I like working with vocals on top. So I'm going to hold Command to make multiple selections, or Control on a PC, and then drag these to the top. So I've got vocals on top, guitar and bass next for me, and I also might kind of make those the same colors. So once they're selected like this, I can double click on the side here, and let's make them both this sort of light blue color. Okay, and then I've got my kick, snare, high tom, mid tom, floor tom. That's cool for me. And then backing tracks and a master. Luckily we have all of these different things are named appropriately. I'm just crazy about having master number 1 for some reason, so I'm just going to delete those because I'm OCD about my master track just saying master. And you definitely do want to have the master. If for some reason it wasn't there on yours, you want to go to track and new, and make sure you create a stereo master fader through all that stuff. Because we just need to be able to meter how everything is balanced out all together. So now what I want to do is I'll remove my color palette, and I want to make groups. See this area in the bottom left here? It says groups. By default, Pro Tools gives us an all group, which applies to any track that I ever have in here. So if I switch to the mixer view with Command equals or Control equals, or going up to window in the toolbar and hitting mix. So I'll bring up my mix window, which kind of shows me everything that I've got, but from the perspective of a virtual mixing console. If I select the all group over here, and I start making a manipulation on something here, it moves all of them, which is kind of cool. But I want to be able to do that for smaller groups of things. So hold Option to click these back into place. I'm also going to get rid of some of these things we don't need. I see that I still have some of these sends to different Aviom channels that are still here. We want to get rid of these things. So I'm holding Option to apply what I'm doing to all tracks, and just going to hit no send. And the same here for this bus. We'll get to that stuff eventually, but we want to have a clean, a clean slate. So anyway, I'm going to deselect this all group. And I'm going to start creating groups for other things. And if you notice, I've got overheads just sort of hanging out here. I'm going to put that at the end of my drum group. Not sure how I missed that one. But I want to have vocals together, so I'm selecting both of these things, and then the shortcut Command or Control G to bring up a groups window. And I want to name this vocals. And I want the type of group it's going to be is a mix/edit group. I want it to affect everything that I'm doing. If I have the group selected, I want any mixing or editing changes to apply to the whole group. So maybe I didn't select something that I wanted to. I could add it to the group here by seeing the list of the other things and saying, oh, I want snare to be in that group. But obviously, that doesn't really make any sense, so I'll take it out. All right, when I do that, it adds a vocal group over here. All right, so same for guitar and bass. Control G, and we'll call it guitars. Here's my drum group. And obviously backing tracks is sort of on its own. Notice when I made these that the groups remain highlighted. So if I started doing some mixing to my drums, they'd all move together right now. And that maybe isn't what I necessarily want. So when working with groups, you really have to be aware of whether or not you've got them enabled or not. So make sure you check that sort of thing out. The final thing that I want to do is actually make a group for everything except for the master, because my all group, if you see, it even affects my master fader, which is not what I want. So I'm going to go through and select everything except for the master and say not master. That way when I get all the different, say I make various changes to all these different things, but I'm still clipping overall in my master, I can select my not master group, just pull everything down in relationship to each other a little bit, and then I'll be all set. So that's kind of a nice way to approach that. All right, so moving back to the edit window with Command equals, now I'm going to go through and really listen to this tune, make some observations, and maybe even make some comments to myself. So I'm adding a comments column to my tracks, and then I can like type some stuff in here. So I'm going to start listening, and as I go, I'm going to look at my markers area in the timeline and hit the plus sign in order to place a marker at a spot in the timeline to say whether this is the song intro or verse, chorus, guitar solo, etc. So let's take a listen and make some observations. All right, so there's my intro. So really, that's sort of the spot that I would call my verse. So I'm going to place a marker there and call it verse 1 and move it right back where I can see those vocals start. This is what I would call a pre-chorus. Alright, so I was maybe a little bit tricky there. I was thinking they had a pre-chorus in there, but I'm just going to call this chorus number 1. And then it sounded like right here they sort of fade, guitar fades out after the vocal line holds. And we're sort of back to a verse here. So we really want to bring out this lead vocal. So there's that chorus again. You can kind of see where it happens. So you can almost like look at the waveforms to sort of see where things are going on. And there's a couple other little tricks that I wanted to show you with that too. So sometimes when you're working, you know, the waveforms are a little bit small, so you can blow those up with this little button up here. So then you can kind of see things a little bit better. Kind of see how they're going. So this is definitely like the bass is just too loud. We need everything to cut through. And then I'm going to make a mark, and this is sort of for all the drums. I want to pan these to audience perspective. And we'll talk a little bit more of that specifically, but it just means like pretend like you're at a show and you're looking at the stage and you want to be able to hear the sounds where they appear like they should be coming from. So if a drum is way off on the floor to the right, you want it to hear like it's coming from the audience on the left-hand side, right? So you're going to be thinking about those sorts of things. So let's see, the chorus should end right about here, and we'll see if there's a guitar solo or something. Yeah, so there's like a bass breakdown, and then there's a guitar solo. So I'm going to mark those things. So here's our breakdown. And then right here, there was definitely a guitar solo starting. And the importance of having markers for these kind of places is because it might, you know, down the line here, once we get going, we might choose to automate something like the guitar so it raises volume at that particular moment. And if we have all this song structure laid out for us, then it'll be a lot easier to make that stuff happen quickly. There's nothing to say that hasn't been said. Nothing. All right, so there's like your third chorus. It comes back in after the guitar solo. So we'll say it's chorus number 3, and then we'll hear what the ending is like. Very cool. Now, there's not like, it's kind of a hard ending there. Since we're working from a Pro Tools session and not imported files, you should be able to like bring some of this stuff back. So there's like other existing audio here. So if that fades out too quickly, you might be able to bring some audio back. And like say I want to do that for all my tracks. If I just hold Shift and sort of make a selection like this, then I'm going to be able to do all of them at once. But you see there's some other noise happening. So I'm just going to go and expand like right until I start getting that other noise. And there might be an individual element or two. Like if I zoom in on this guitar area, I can see there's like a little something right there. You know, there's little things. But I just, the idea here is that I just don't want things to sound like they fade out so quickly that it sounds unnatural. So bring back whatever audio you've got that is necessary for that, for it to sound natural. And I think that's pretty much good for now. So go through your material, organize yourself in a way that makes sense, change the colors around so it's real pretty. Go through the song structure and lay that stuff out for yourself, and make some meaningful comments here in these areas so that when we, you know, get to each different stage of the mixing process, you can kind of go through there and have, you know, cliff notes set of things that you need to accomplish. That can be really useful. And always, like anything, save as often as possible. All right, very cool. I'll see you next time.